Prior to the full reveal of Path of Exile's 3.27 update, a lot of players were expecting this league to bring about a large balance shift due to some comments made by game director Mark Roberts during the Q&A from the previous patch. And whilst the patch notes themselves left a lot to be desired in terms of balance changes, little did we know that the biggest mover in terms of the meta would turn out to be the hundreds of newly added Foulborn Unique items. Old, core drop ball uniques that have had one or several of their modifiers replaced by new ones. In many cases, these Foulborn Unique items were different enough and powerful enough to focus an entire build idea around, and in some cases they have been the missing piece of the puzzle to finally make an older build concept come to life. So in this video I'm going to cover some of the most meta-shaking new Foulborn Uniques added in the Keepers of the Flame update, and hopefully make the case for why Foulborn Uniques should go into the core game in 3.28 and beyond. Let's begin with a big one, a unique jewel, the Foulborn Red Dream, not least because this is the most used Foulborn Unique item in both softcore and hardcore trade leagues for 3.27. In softcore, this jewel is socketed in the passive tree of an impressive 8% of characters between level 95 and 100, whilst in hardcore it's being utilised even more, at 11% of level 95 plus characters. The Foulborn Red Dream has several different variants, but the one that's being used in the massive majority of these builds replaces the chance to gain an endurance charge modifier with one that provides increased maximum life based on allocated nodes in the jewel's radius that grant either fire resistance or all elemental resistances. This has provided a very much needed boost to life-based builds, to allow them to compete with endgame energy shield setups. And as you can see, a large amount of the characters that are using the jewel are based in that lower left area of the passive skill tree. Around 40% are chieftains and another 17% juggernaut, so the majority are marauders. But there's also a 20% showing for gladiator here, that's mostly cast when stunned setups. And additionally, there's a good showing for elementalists too, those are mostly Fizzdot builds. Now, it's important to note the strength of this jewel based on where it's socketed in the tree. There are 3 sockets that can make good use of the Foulborn Red Dream, but the most notable is the one immediately outside the Marauder start location, right here. Now, the exact pathing used matters a lot for how much you can actually get out of this jewel, and that's because of the use of tattoos to replace the strength pathing nodes with 6% fire resistance nodes, which when combined with the Foulborn Red Dream will make each of those small nodes provide an additional 4% increased maximum life. And on top of all of the converted pathing nodes, there's also a life wheel here that has elemental resistances and fire resists, and another notable for all elemental resistances over here. And for this example setup I have right here, the jewel is providing an extra 55% increased maximum life. That is incredible. But I should also note the other 2 jewel sockets which have a bit less potential, but they're still quite good. The first is this socket here south of the duelist start location, and once again this depends very much on the pathing used to reach the socket. Most builds won't path to this socket from the top, but if you do, you can get more out of the jewel with tattoos. But this example right here is an extra 19% increased maximum life. And the other socket is here outside the Templar start location. This one is quite a bit better than that, at a bonus of 31% increased maximum life with this example setup. And that means that there are several good locations to make use of this jewel, though nothing can beat that Marauder start location node. Now, this addition has meant that life builds in this area of the tree are either able to tank up more as a result of a lot of extra life scaling, or they have more points to spend on damage as they're able to drop life investments elsewhere. And this has been a boon to allow life builds to scale that bit extra into endgame and allow them to compete with other builds in regards to more difficult content. Now, moving on from a Foulborn that has provided a welcome boost to life builds, to one that has enabled an entirely new build, the Accuracy and Intelligence Stacking Juggernaut. I am of course talking about the Foulborn Hand of Thought and Motion, which can have the very powerful modifier 5% increased accuracy per 25 intelligence. And the reason that this modifier is so strong is that it essentially solves the accuracy scaling issue that many accuracy stacking builds have had in the past. You're always able to get a good amount of flat accuracy from your gear, especially Abyss Jewels, but scaling that flat accuracy has often been difficult and requires other investments such as stacking frenzy charges with precursor emblem rings that grant increased accuracy per frenzy charge. And that means that those builds are sometimes bottlenecked on how much accuracy scaling they can reasonably obtain, either through having to invest too much elsewhere, or often you're just not able to reach the level of gear to fully enable these types of builds because they require extremely expensive pieces of gear. A good Precursor's emblem in a league where accuracy stacking is even remotely on trend may cost several mirrors. But this Foulborn Unique Claw changes all of that, because it allows you to scale your flat accuracy by simply investing into stacking intelligence. And there's several reasons why this is so strong. Firstly, there's the fact that intelligence stacking has already been very powerful over recent leagues due to the sheer amount of energy shield scaling you can obtain, and the bonuses you gain from mastery specifically. You gain flat accuracy equals your intelligence from the accuracy mastery, so that's a huge amount of flat accuracy gained immediately, which can then be scaled by the claw, and you also get increased evasion rating scaling from your intelligence as well, from the energy shield evasion mastery. And then the Shaper's Touch unique gloves provide even more of the same. Combine that with the flat lightning damage from the Ritual exclusive Storm Rider boot space, and the massive amount of increased attack speed from the Juggernaut's undeniable Ascendancy notable, and there you have an exceptionally strong build, likely the strongest overall build of this league. Now I think it's fair to say that this Foulborn version of the Hand of Thought and Motion is a tad too strong, okay, probably a bit more than a tad, but the fact that a new Foulborn Unique has enabled such a build is incredible, and I would still like to see it go core, even if it would require nerfs to get there. Okay, let's move on from an endgame meta shifter to a Foulborn item that has had a massive impact much earlier into the game, the Foulborn version of Doedre's Scorn, which supports socketed gems with level 30 Impending Doom. Now, to put that into perspective, this is about 6,000 to 9,000 flat chaos damage, and you can equip this helmet as early as level 39. That means that you can begin using this item around the start of Act 5. A normal level 4 Impending Doom support gem requires a level 38 character and deals 175 to 263 base chaos damage. So by equipping the Foulborn version of Doedre's Scorn at this level, that means you're dealing about 34 times the damage that you would be dealing with the normal gem. That's wild. But it's also just great to see, because this has allowed for some incredible campaign blasting. Pack was early to this Foulborn Unique and put out a video about how good this item was for leveling, enabling you to just pretty much one-shot all of the campaign bosses and blast through all of the areas. And what I really like about the design and the numbers on this one is that it's still outclassed in the endgame by a very well-rolled Forbidden Shaco, but a well-rolled Forbidden Shaco is very rare and hard to come by, which means it's also very expensive, and that means that you can equip this item halfway through the campaign and just never take it off if you want to. This can be your build set in motion from that point, and you can scale deep into the endgame with it if you wanted to do that. Or instead, you could simply just use this item to blast through the campaign and reach the endgame faster before respeccing into your actual build. It provides a lot of freedom in that sense, and this is one of the Foulborn Uniques that I'd like to see go core with no changes at all. Now there's a whole bunch of other Foulborn items that should be mentioned here. There's the Foulborn version of Beric's Respite, which enables a new way to obtain explode modifiers on different builds, and there's some really fun interactions there for explosion chains when you're able to make types of elemental damage cause different ailments, which is why so many of the characters using those rings are elementalists. There's also the Foulborn Esh's Mirror, which provides somewhat easy access to damage reflect immunity, and that's being used by about 2% of level 95 plus characters, mostly Deadeye builds. And I must also mention the Foulborn Kikazaru for its potential in mana stacking builds. It's just such a good item in that slot. You gain a lot of extra benefits from using two of them as well, essentially becoming unaffected by curses and gaining a bunch of attributes and mana regen, not to mention of course the huge stack of flat mana, up to 200 on a max level character, That's about 120 extra flat mana compared to a tier 1 roll on a crafted ring. Now, I believe that Foulborn Unique items should go core, and I also think that they will go core in one form or another. Part of that is because the Breach rework is almost guaranteed to be going core, and that mechanic will need unique rewards. But it's also just the potential of these new uniques. There are so many of them, hundreds of them, and I only discussed a handful of them in this video. Like replica uniques from Heist, I could see many of them lying dormant for many leagues, and it only takes a few specific balance changes to occur elsewhere, and suddenly, one or several of these Foulborn uniques become a prominent part of the meta, and they enable a new build or two. Ultimately, even though it's obvious that some of the Foulborns will need balance tweaks, I just see them as more options for the players, more toys to play with, and in a game like Path of Exile that's just a sandbox for creativity, that can only be a good thing. Thanks for watching this video, and as always, stay tuned and stay safe.